once again to our Fargo Baptist Church family, and welcome back to another segment of While We're Apart. We've been talking this week about help for the hurting heart. We're not talking about that muscle in your chest about the size of your fist that pumps dozens of times every minute all your life long, but we're talking about the inner heart, the part of you that feels, that hurts, that loves, that grieves. And is there help for the hurting heart? Well, we've been looking at Psalm 147, and in verse number 1, the Bible says, "Praise ye the Lord, for it is good to sing praises unto our God. It is pleasant, and praise is comely. The Lord doth build up Jerusalem. He gathereth together the outcasts of Israel. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds." I like that. He healeth the broken in heart, and bindeth up their wounds. You know, there's enough in this world to hurt over. In fact, the Bible says in Job 5:7, "Yet man is born unto trouble as the sparks fly upward." You're born into it. It's waiting for you. When you come into this life, there's going to be hurting times. You say, "But Pastor, when I got saved, when I was born again, didn't all that change?" Well, it did all change, but it didn't get better. It perhaps intensified. As far as the resistance now goes, you've got three enemies working against you. You have the world, the flesh, and the devil all working against you and making it even rougher. In fact, in 1 Thessalonians 3:3, it says that no man should be moved by these afflictions, for yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. And this is talking to Christian people, and it says that no man should be moved by these afflictions or surprised or shocked by them, because truth is, we were appointed unto these things. Are you familiar with burdens? Are you familiar with trials? Are you familiar with heartaches? Well, we've been looking this week, as we consider this, at what I call the hurting people. The hurting people. And in the Bible, it reads like who's who when we look at those who had heartaches. In fact, you can go way back to Genesis chapter 3, and you can find the fall of mankind, and you can see really the consequences that it reaped as a result of what Adam and Eve did. We see this curse pronounced upon Adam and Eve after they had sinned. And God says unto the woman, "I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children." Every woman can attest to that who's had a baby. "And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." And to Adam he said, "Because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face thou shalt eat bread till thou return unto the dust." It's not good news, and it brought forth, no doubt, guilt, and it brought forth regret, and it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And unfortunately, the news didn't get any better for Adam and Eve. They had children, Cain and Abel. One slew the other. If you can imagine one sibling killing the other. It happens. We read it in the news from time to time. And I can't imagine a greater anguish or grief than to have one of your children kill the other. Well, as time goes on, we find that God tells Abraham that he and Sarah are going to have a child. Name's going to be Isaac. But years go by and it doesn't happen. And so they run ahead of God. We often do that. And Abraham takes Hagar and has a child with her by the name of Ishmael. And now there's this sibling rivalry once again. And Abraham has to cast out Ishmael along with his mother Hagar. And the Bible tells us that was a burden of heart to him. That was a great grief to him. As time marches on, Isaac grows up, and now there's another clash with his brother, and I won't get into that, but Jacob is the other brother, and he grows up, and he has 12 sons. Most of them are rats. They lie about Joseph being dead. They actually sold him into slavery. And Jacob, when he hears the news, he tears his clothes, and he says, "I'm going to go down to my grave with sorrow." Life is a vale of tears. And as we look at the Bible, we see all these figures here that really had burdens, they had heartaches. Eli was a good high priest. He was a moral man, but he was a bad dad. And he raised Hophni and Phinehas, and they were just as wicked as the devil. And God says they're going to die prematurely. We see weeping Naomi, and she comes back to the homeland after being in a heathen land, and she's lost everything, her husband, her sons. And she said unto them as she came back in Ruth 1:20, call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. She said, the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. And she carried that heartache back to her homeland. We could talk about Job, and of course Job was a man who had everything going for him, but lost everything within a day, within a matter of hours. And he said, the thing that I have feared most has come upon me. Probably his greatest grief being the loss of his children. We could take a look at Jonah in the Bible, and he ends up in the belly of a whale. You think you have problems, but imagine what Jonah was going through. We could talk about Hannah, a wonderful lady in the Bible, a sweet gal, but she couldn't have children, and it really was a heartache to her. And we read in 1 Samuel 1:6 that her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she, the adversary, provoked her, Hannah. Therefore she wept and did not eat. We find these folks who went through the battles. I'm thinking of David. I mean, David actually had this battle plan at Ziklag, and it seemed victorious, but it backfired. And the enemy came and stole away all the wives of the men and the children of the men and all their stuff. And the Bible tells that they spoke of stoning David. In 1 Samuel 30, verse 6, David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. Now, we find here there are those times in life where we have a heartache. The passage goes on, and it says ironically, but David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. How can we do that? Well, let me close with a few verses this morning or today that kind of tell us how we can do that. In Hebrews 13:6, the Bible says, so that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. That's what David was able to do. The Lord is my helper. I'm not going to fear what man shall do unto me. And then we read in Isaiah 51:12, where God says, I, even I, am he that comforteth you. God says, I'm the one who can comfort you. And then in Matthew 11:28, Jesus himself says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Those are some wonderful verses to meditate on as we go through the day today. And so that's it for this segment of While We're Apart. God bless you, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joyful